talking about human capital ROI. That's return on investment for all you that don't know what that is. Most companies look to HR for compliance. And today we're going to take a look at how human resources can positively affect profit rather than holding down costs. I'm Rick Gerard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Our mission is to discuss and deconstruct insights from top performing entrepreneurs and industry experts. Every week, we uncover tested, tactical solutions to solve your company's toughest hiring problems. Today, our guest is Rod Swartwood. Rod is the founder and president of HR Prime, a full-service HR consultancy specializing in strategic and tactical creation of best-in-class talent management practices and world-beating teams. From HRIS roles with government agencies in the early days of land-based business commuting through his strategic HR leadership roles at startups and Fortune 300 companies, his 26 years of practical HR leadership in a variety of verticals, coupled with his degrees in organizational psychology and business, give him a unique opportunity to guide both young organizations and established entities to greater productivity and profits. Rod, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah. So we're kind of kindred spirits. We look at things fairly similar. I had the opportunity to sit on a talk that you gave for Octane, and I really like kind of your quality approach to your craft, which I hold a high affinity for as well. So I like the fact that you do things right, and so which is why I wanted to have you on the show. A couple of things I want to cover with you is kind of your view on human resources. I want to talk about reasons for kind of rethinking your view on HR from an executive perspective. And we're going to specifically with HCROI. And then on the second part of the show, we're going to talk about steps to build a strong human capital talent management program and prioritize it at the top of the pyramid.
Okay.
So let's talk about your approach to an effective HR department.
Well, I start with the fact that too many people sort of misclassify HR as overly reliant on the compliance side of things.
Yeah.
It's the old personnel department that makes sure your handbook is in good shape, you're writing people up when they do something wrong, and that you're not getting sued by anyone, and you're meeting all the government compliance rules that you need to meet, which is
Sure.
perfectly fine. It's an important base of the pyramid, if you will.
Sure. That and employee benefits, right?
Well, employee benefits,
Yeah.
which you aren't required to offer.
Yeah.
You want to, if you're a good employee value proposition, if you're a place people want to work, you offer good benefits.
Sure.
But it's more in the treatment of people. The old school, I'm going to use that word, believe that it's really about control of the workforce.
Sure.
Whereas if you want higher productivity, it's more about giving them autonomy.
And there is no control of the workforce.
It doesn't work.
It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't exist, but many people, mostly leadership, CEOs, if you talk to them, they'll think of HR as, well, that's the group that keeps me from getting sued. They're ones that, yeah, they hire people, but they make sure we don't ask any illegal questions when we're hiring, or they make sure that no one grabs anybody in the bathroom or anything like that. Well,
Sure.
okay, that's absolutely important, and it's an essential cost of doing business, especially in California.
Sure.
But there's so much on the upside of the pyramid, the strategic side of things, that can generate greater productivity and effectiveness in your workforce that don't have anything to do with the rules and regs.
So what is the typical pyramid for most kind of the way that an executive looks at it? Like, what does that look like for an HR organization?
Well, unfortunately, they don't look at it as a pyramid.
Yeah.
They generally look at it as this base of compliance. This is what we need to do to stay away from breaking a law or getting
Sure.
sued. Then they'll put another layer on top of it, which is the tactical application of those things, which means the processes, how you get things done.
Sure.
How do you-
Application,
Yeah,
making sure you have all the...
Making sure the stuff's in place so that
Yeah.
the hiring process goes well, people get onboarded, and there's another place where there's some misconception.
Sure.
Onboarding to most people means the proper paperwork and a file. No, it should probably go a step above that and talk
Yeah.
about culturizing and having somebody get your vision and know how they can contribute. So the highest level of the pyramid is strategic, and it's an alignment between the vision that you have as a leader or a company,
Mm-hmm.
the goals that you have, and the values that you help use to create those things. And if those are aligned, you get greater productivity. But people don't spend a lot of time on that. They just assume it's going to happen.
Sure, sure. Okay, so how do you structure an organization if you were to come in and help them out?
Yeah, that's if I had the magic wand, it would be from the leadership down,
Sure.
and they would see the importance of it. It's funny. Jack Welch wrote this about 30 years ago in his book Winning. He said that the head of human resources should probably be as important, if not more important, than the CFO in an organization, and should directly report to the CEO, because that's what it's all about.
Sure.
You differentiate yourself as a business financially by the people you have. The
Sure.
right people aligned and performing effectively will beat a group of people who are just there to keep their jobs any day.
Yeah. And I think if you look at there's a lot of really good HR people that are out there, and then there's some that are, again, just so cluttered up with the compliance issues and the other things that they just don't have time to focus on those other things that.
Well, the analogy I use is in your finance department in any company, large enough company, there's usually a CFO,
Mm-hmm.
then there's some controllers, and then there's some accounting managers, and then there's some clerks. And if you see that striation of skill set as necessary for the business, because one level is doing tactical things, one level is doing compliance things, one level is doing strategic things.
Yeah.
But they don't duplicate that in HR for some reason. They stick to the compliance level. That's not saying that that's a bad HR person who's doing all compliance work. It's just all the organization is allowing them to do.
No, and I'm not implying that there's bad HR people. I mean, I just think that HR gets stuck with all the things that nobody else wants to do a lot of times, right?
Well, it definitely. I've seen it
Yeah.
all in 26 years.
I'm sure.
I've been
I
stuck
have
with
too
some-
on the recruiting side for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this concept of human capital return on investment. So you actually taught me a little bit about this, which I was pretty fascinated by. So what's the formula for human capital ROI?
Well, the math and all of this can come from your finance department. Almost
Sure.
all of it's in your balance sheet, P&L, your financial documents. But it's the math is you isolate people cost from total expense, and then you take that away from revenue, and then you divide that number against your people cost. So
Okay.
what you end up the formula is revenue minus total expense minus people cost divided by people cost. And what that creates is a ratio that's very much like earnings per share.
Okay.
So think of earnings per share as the earnings you get per each share of stock.
Sure.
This would be the profit you get per each dollar of people spend.
Okay.
That's the simple version.
Got it.
And when you look at this, people look at a lot of metrics in HR now. They didn't used to look at any,
Yeah.
but now they start to look at metrics. One of the metrics is
Thank you, Google, for data-driven and
Right.
analysis. Yeah.
But many people will focus on a metric like revenue per head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a good metric, and people can kind of gauge where you are. If you're $250,000 in revenue per head, you're doing something like other people are doing.
Sure.
But if you decide to have a massive layoff and let 30 people, 30,000 people, whatever the size of your organization is, go, now your revenue per head for the following 12 months, because the lag effect of revenue dropping from those people effects is going to be slow,
Yeah.
and your revenue per head is going to look great.
Got it.
But your profit per people dollar is not going to go up that much.
Yeah.
And this is a mitigating factor. It's why you use earnings per share to take a look at a stock
Got it.
purchase rather than the cost of the share.
Got it. So what should so if a company is kind of at the break-even point, what should that number look like?
Okay, I can only go from the companies I've worked with and done this metric on. And,
Sure.
And that would be, in similar companies, it depends on what type of industry it is, because you're isolating people cost from operational cost.
Got it.
So if it's a very capital intensive organization, that number might not be that big. But if it's a lot of paper, like insurance companies or things like that, you can end up having a larger number.
Sure.
So in my time, I've seen that number be anywhere from 101%, meaning a penny back in profit for every dollar spent on people,
Sure. Okay.
all the way up to $2 and $3 and $4
Wow.
in profit for every dollar spent on people,
Okay.
like warranty business or an insurance business.
So they are you in fact basing it on productivity?
It is an extension of the productivity level that you're getting.
Okay.
In other words, you've hired a bunch of people. You're paying them a certain amount of money. You're paying their benefits. You're paying their the payroll taxes. You're paying their bonuses. You're doing a number of things that cost you money to have them there.
Yeah.
They're returning an amount of profit, which isolates other costs besides people cost from
Got
the
it.
revenue, that you can measure. And if it's usually a trend analysis that works best, because any point in time it could be great because you had a good month or
Yeah.
whatever. So you look at trend over time, and you can mitigate the outlying numbers by doing a 12-month rolling or 3-month rolling, whatever you feel is necessary, and you can get an idea: is this thing going up relative to what my revenue is going up, or revenue relative to any other number, or is it going down while my revenue is going up? In which case, I've got more revenue coming in, and I'm paying my people more, but I'm not getting more out of it
Yeah.
on the profit end.
Yeah.
So what cost factors? You have to look at other things.
Yeah.
But it should be rising, and it should be above a 20% return, I would think. And if you're not getting 20% back from the people investment, and
Yeah.
it's not that good.
Yeah, exactly. So would this be something that you can implement in a smaller company that's maybe pre-revenue though?
Yeah, that's where you'd have to plug in
Yeah.
investment dollars as revenue,
Okay.
or maybe take out research and development as a cost, so that you can mitigate the wide swing.
Okay.
There's a way to get an indication over time. You just have to figure a new number for revenue,
Got it.
and therefore a new number for profit,
Got it.
because you may not
So
have
whether or not you're able to raise the next round of funding, and
Mhm.
when that funding comes in,
you could call that revenue for now
sure.
to measure this effectiveness. Now, the other thing with that is, if you're losing money, which some companies do for many years,
Oh
months,
yeah.
you still have a number. It's just going to be below a dollar.
Yeah.
You're going to be 93 cents back for every dollar you spend,
Okay.
or something like that. But if that trend is dropping more and more and more, you're throwing more good money after bad in terms of productivity and profit.
Got it. So you're doing this year after year, or month after month. You're kind of gauging it.
I like to use monthly,
Okay.
and then mitigate at least quarterly trend analysis rather than using the monthly, because there's too wide of swings. Because you could have a bonus payout in 1 month that would turn that whole thing upside down.
Oh yeah.
I also want to caution that if you go to the doctor and he just takes one measurement on you and says your blood pressure is this, you're good, go home, you do want other measurements
Yeah.
to go with this. And
Sure.
so there are many other metrics that you should add to this to see the health of your organization.
Got
This
it.
is just a good one for people and productivity, and if whether or not you're getting a lot out of your people investment.
Got it. Got it. Is time factored into this as well?
Only
Maybe
in,
the amount of time that they're investing in the company.
well, it should rectify itself in terms of time, because you're going to have new people who are still learning the job. You're going to have people who are established and been there a while who are really effective. Now, if you do it on an individual basis, it really isn't fair, because certain people have gotten to a point in their career where they can't return as much as they're getting.
Yeah.
But they're teaching others, and that shows up in those people's metrics. So it's better to do it company-wide. You can do department, you can do division, you can do if you have different locations, you can do locations and can compare and contrast. I did that for a company that had the Bay Area and a San Diego office, and it was pretty eye-opening.
Oh, to see which one was more productive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very cool. This is great stuff. So we're talking to Rod Swartwood, the founder and president of HR Prime, about human capital ROI. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about how to implement kind of ROI into your company operations. Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and our guest today is Rod Swartwood, president of HR Prime. So we just discussed a little bit about what human capital return on investment is. Now we're going to explore how to implement that into your systems and talk about how to put together a plan and build it into your company. So now what I'd like to do is delve into kind of talent management aspect and how HCROI approach not only attracts better people, but how it helps retain them. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that companies that measure things like this, people that look at people as a productivity enhancer, a profit enhancer, rather than a cost to control,
yes,
that they are automatically showing their employees that they matter in a way that's going to benefit both them and the leadership of the organization's shareholders.
So you said something key there, cost to control. People are not a cost to control.
They're not, but they're looked at. And the term human resources, capital resources are something that you talk about value with, right?
Yeah.
You'd say, well, I want to buy this tractor instead of this tractor because it gives better value, it performs better.
Sure.
But they don't talk about that with people necessarily. They accept who they get as a warm body to fill a spot to do the work they need to do, and they expect that, well, this person's going to do the job because they want to work here. They need the job. Well, it's not necessarily automatic.
Yeah. Well, somebody who needs the job doesn't necessarily want to work there. They're taking it because the job's available to them. And they're probably not performing up to their maximum standards if they just are taking the job because they need it.
The number one reason for mediocre performance or even low performance, and conversely, the reason for high performance is whether or not the person, the employee, their values are aligned with the values, goals, and directions of the company.
They have a purpose.
They have a purpose.
Yeah.
And Daniel Pink talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose as three things that the workforce is really looking for.
Absolutely.
Especially today when there's no factory work. It's really all high level.
It's all knowledge-based work. Yeah.
So the way to instill this in your organization is to look at it holistically. You don't just say, well, I need to recruit a spot, so I'll try to find a good person and do a good job of interviewing, and once I get them, they'll be fine. I'll put them out there and they'll do the work.
That happens all the time, though.
It happens all the time.
It happens far too often.
And maybe 6 out of 10 times it works.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're lucky, because people are flexible and they can adjust and adapt.
Yeah.
But they don't stay long because after a while that gets old, going to work to a place that you don't really want to go to because you don't feel that you have a higher purpose or you're doing something worthwhile. So the way I look at it, and I created this acronym, ASCEND. Attract, select, culturize, engage, inspire, and develop. So it's a suite of things that happen to match the word rise up and get better or higher.
Sure.
And the attract part is the employment brand you have, and that's what you stand for. That's your values and who you are.
And how you engage candidates.
Well, engage is another step.
Okay. Right. My bad, I'm skipping ahead.
But having a good employment brand is important, and you get that you get that through being who you say you are to the people who are there so that they can word of mouth it out to the world.
Got it. Okay.
Then once you get people coming to want to work there, you select the ones that are aligned with your values, your goals, and objectives. And that's a tough job. You do it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
You know how difficult it is.
Yeah. Matching somebody's wants with, with what your opportunity is.
Well, just recruiting and interviewing at all is a tough job. But what we do is we leave it to hiring managers who don't have any skill set in that.
Yeah.
They're good at what they do.
Well, they're good at asking the technical questions or getting to the root of whether or not the person can do the job.
Right.
But whether they fit culturally or whether or not they're going to actually excel in the job,
absolutely.
That kind of
and
that's a big part of our coaching that we do.
And yes, asking good questions beyond the technical and interpreting their answers to see if they'll be a good indicator in the future.
Yeah.
Those are good skills to have. Most managers don't have them.
Yeah.
So
well, it's funny. Google took managers out of the hiring process completely.
Yeah. Well, you either have to do that or train them really well.
So managers don't have a choice in who they hire. They have a panel that does an totally objective interview. If they meet the bar, then they place them in a role with a manager.
Well, since we're talking about Google, don't they have a pretty good employment brand too?
Yeah, they do.
So now you've got the first 2 steps.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they do.
But some small startup, that's a tough thing.
Well, there's something that appeals about small startups to some people. and that's
To a lot of people.
To a lot of people,
Yeah.
and finding that person without just looking at their resume as a technical indicator of their ability to do a job, like you said,
Yeah.
their alignment, their feelings of I share this value and I'm going to make this my purpose, just like you've made it yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then the next step is to culturize, and that's where you get them completely. It's called onboarding in most places, but again, when we said that's paperwork.
We should just say culture a bunch more times because our engineer Paul just hates that word, and I love it to no extent. So
Well, I needed a word that started with C.
yeah,
So-
I get you on that one.
but it is true because your values equal your culture,
Yeah.
and that is your employment brand. So
Exactly.
you need to get them involved in that, and that can be through a lot of different ways. But we don't need to go into the detail. But
Yep.
the next step is engaging them, and that's where you've got their body there, you got their hands working, but now you need their heads and their hearts.
Got it.
And I told a couple stories at the Octane thing about a local company, Edwards Life Science, that brings people who've had their heart valves implanted in them, and they introduce them face to face with the technician that made it.
Oh wow.
And there's tears and hugs and balloons and food, and that
That's
person,
super powerful.
that technician,
Yeah.
comes to work every day thinking they save lives,
Yeah.
not they make heart valves.
Yeah.
So that kind of engagement is priceless.
Yeah.
And now you've got, now that kind of mentality takes care of inspiration, because every day these people are coming to work inspired to help you achieve your goals. They're on your team.
Yeah.
They're not just there to collect a paycheck.
Yep.
And then finally, you have to develop your people. Assuming that you've got somebody with experience and technical skills, and then they come to work for you and they go, okay, good, you're good, go to work. Continuous learning is the thing.
Yeah.
It's always been, but now it's forefront.
Yeah.
And young people especially, but even people my age, I love learning new things.
I
And
do as well.
Yeah.
And if you're not learning, you're dying.
That's right.
Right?
It's green and growing, or ripe and rotting.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Exactly.
And if you don't offer development opportunities, even if it's just giving someone stretch assignments to get them out of their comfort zone, not just sending them to class, then now you've got this stair-step thing that has built the attraction of your job employment brand
Yeah.
to the point where good people want to come there. You don't have to hunt for them as hard.
Yeah.
So once you get that cycle going, it does create an easier way to keep turnover down, productivity up.
Well, and it also translates over into when people are in the interview process, they become more attracted to it because they see that people are
Mhm.
fully developed. They're engaged and developed.
That's right.
You
And
know? Those are hand in hand, right?
they tend not to leave as often or as
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything is related. That's why I call it a holistic approach.
No.
And good HR leaders who have the ear of the CEO, they can definitely get these things in place beyond the files and the dotted I's and crossed T's that they have to put in place to make sure they don't get sued. So
Yeah.
it can be built on a compliance. And again, we talked about the pyramid. Compliance at the base, tactical application in the middle, and strategic alignment with the company's goals at the top.
Now I'm curious. Just this, I'm going to totally throw you for a loophole here because we didn't prep this. But so to build out an effective HR department, I've always been of the, most people who are kind of heading up an HR department really don't want much to do with the recruiting side, and usually they bring in a recruiter or something like that to come in and kind of build that side up, right? So when you're building an HR department or a talent management organization, what's the most effective way to kind of build something out? Maybe starting small, and then like maybe a mid-sized company. Where do you get the most ROI out of that department?
Well, let me tell you what I've seen.
Totally throwing you.
Most small companies have a CFO or a controller running the quote unquote HR department, which is really the office manager or
Yeah.
their accounting clerk keeping files.
Got it.
And so your first step would be to get that CFO, controller, the operations person, whoever's been given this a hated assignment of running HR
Yeah.
in a small company, to see that, hey, you know what? You wouldn't ask me to close your books or to run a financial analysis.
Yeah.
Why would you be doing these things that are not in your area of expertise? So if you can get the CEO to say, look, I want you to do what you do, and let me bring in some help, even if it's fractional, like
Yeah.
1 day a week, you can then teach managers who are doing the hiring anyway, because they're not going to bring in a recruiter yet,
Yeah.
you can teach them to do a slightly better job.
Yep.
Once the slightly better job starts to happen, and you get good people in who are performing more, you might have a little bit of money to throw some development or to get some manager and leadership training on day-to-day inspirational psychological paychecks, reward recognition stuff. You could start doing projects, and that would take away from the CFO trying to do just the bare minimum to keep the compliance end.
Yeah.
Now, even companies that have an HR person,
or even so it's outsourcing the HR is probably the best route to go in the very beginning stages of a company.
Outsourcing the strategic part that you can't afford to have and you don't need yet.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't hire an architect to start designing your house after it's being started to build. You'd want to do that first. So having
just like you wouldn't put up the framework without laying the foundation.
Laying the foundation.
Right? Yeah.
So, I mean, if in bigger organizations, HR persons have usually gotten to the point where they're trying to get that seat at the executive table to try to help add to the productivity level and the performance levels. But they're not being seen as equals. They're not being given that opportunity. So a lot of times you'll see an outsourced mentor to them to try to come in and help that if the organization is forward thinking.
Gotcha. So a couple of takeaways. Let's use the HC ROI kind of formula to measure productivity, which is always a good thing. And then, as people are implementing, give human resources, give your recruiting, your talent acquisition team, which is really handling most of your people, a seat at the table.
That's right.
Make sure they have a voice.
If they're asking the right questions and helping you select the right people, you will see results financially.
Absolutely. So very key. So we're just about out of time for today's show. Rod, thanks again for your investment today. And welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show community.
Thanks, Rick.
Now, I'm sure after what we've talked about, there's going to be some potential clients that want to get a hold of you. What's the best way to reach you?
Well,
I'm plugging for you.
There's two ways. One is my website, hrprimellc.com.
Okay.
And the other is my email, which is rods@hrprimellc.com.
Any particular kind of customers that you're looking for at this time, or any introductions you like?
The thing I think I've had the most success with, and that they have gotten the most out of from me, is the small company that is not quite reached 100 people. They're 50 some odd people. They're maybe 10, and they do have an office manager or a CFO doing their HR work.
Yeah.
And I could come in, as I've done for several medical device companies and others. Just you come in and do a day a week.
Sure.
And it could be, we're going to build up your recruiting skills. We're going to set up a better onboarding process. We just do little bits and pieces, and work on it. And always ask the question, what do you value? What do you want to do here? Where do you want to go? And how can I find people that are aligned with that? How can I help you find people that are aligned?
Gotcha. All right. Well, excellent. So any of you listeners who want to get a hold of Rod, give him a call. So I want to thank our listening audience for tuning into this week's episode of Higher Power. A quick thanks to our production team, our engineer, Paul Roberts, our producers, Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and our executive producer, Kim Iverson. To listen to this show and any past episodes, you can check us out at Higher, that's HIRE, powerradio.com, or Higher Power Radio on iTunes. Follow us also on LinkedIn, Facebook at Higher Power Radio Show, or you can follow me on Twitter at Rick, R-I-C-K, _GIRARD. So we have another great show lined up for you guys next week. Tune in, as our guest is going to be Dilip Jaggi, the founder of Device Interactive. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard on OC Talk Radio.